what happens when quitting is the best option. But sometimes by not giving up, by not quitting, by not giving in, you do far more damage than you ever could have done good. When is the best time to give up? How do you know when enough is enough? So often we talk about beginning things, but when is the best time to quit? When do you know when to let up? Eventually, sometimes, you gotta let go. Knowing when to quit is one of the most important skills you can ever develop. Sometimes quitting is the very best thing you could do. Knowing when to quit, knowing when to save your time and preserve your energy and not give any more and not put yourself through even more than you've already been through, that's a skill. As important as it is to begin something, to start something, it's equally as important to know when you should be quitting. Sometimes you do need to give up. Sometimes you do need to let go. Knowing the difference between when to give up versus when to push harder could be the difference between a lifetime of success or failure. The difference between more damage and trauma versus becoming a better person, evolving into your best self. Quitting is a skill. Just like starting and beginning and being consistent is a skill that you need to develop, knowing when and how to quit, knowing how to properly assess the situation and know if it's time to go, that's a skill too. It is not only possible, but it is human to be attached to things that don't do you good, to be attached to ideas that aren't serving you. But how do you quit? When do you quit? What do you tell yourself? How are you assessing the situation? Today we want to talk about the idea of knowing when to quit, because sometimes pushing and continuing to do the same thing over and over is the worst thing you could have possibly done. Like if you know for a fact that what you're doing isn't working, isn't effective, to continue to do the same thing over and over, it's not going to serve you. Quitting is a skill. Quitting is also neutral. So much like a gun, much like a car, much like a building, much like any material thing you could think of, it's neither good or bad. Money, it's neither good or bad. But what do you do with the money? What do you do with the idea? What do you do with the gun or the building or the car or whatever? You could choose to drive people to safety, or you could choose to do something destructive. What are you choosing to do with your ability to quit? And that's all we're talking about today. Knowing when to identify the right moments to quit. If there's a right time to start, there has to be a right time to quit. If there is a time to be consistent and dedicated and diligent, there also must be an inverse. There also must be a time where you recognize and realize that doing more is actually serving me less. Giving more is actually doing more harm than good. And the sooner you stop, the better off you'll be. Sometimes letting go is the best thing you can do, despite what people will tell you. Like when you know the ship is sinking, when you know there's no chance of salvaging it, sometimes you gotta let go. Sometimes you gotta get off because it's not helping you. I understand that quitting often gets a bad rap, and for good reason. Far too many quit far too often. Far too many people quit indiscriminately, and that's not what we're talking about. Today we're talking about the idea of when the right time to quit is. Not consistently quitting forever, not quitting on things that you know are important, giving up things that aren't doing you good, giving up things that are doing you harm, giving up wars that are unwinnable, giving up battles to win the war. And once again, we come back to that beautiful thing called perspective. Because perspective is going to allow you to see the bigger picture, to see the forest from the trees, to realize you might not be able to win on this day, but if you go back and you regroup and you learn and you study and you prepare, you can come back and win next time. If you watch pro sports, at the end of certain games, you pull out your star player. Why? Because you don't want them getting hurt, because you know for a fact this day is lost. But just because we lost this day doesn't mean we can't still win the championship. Why? Because we can come back, we can prepare, we can regroup, and we can learn from our loss. If we know that losing is where winning comes from, if we know that losing is what causes us to grow and adapt and adjust and find the faults in what we do, to exercise the demons that are within us and become a better version of ourselves, to evolve into our greatest, how can we ever do that if we're not willing to accept the loss, to accept the defeat? Part of being able to quit is being able to accept and handle a loss. I'm going to do a separate video on what it means to accept loss, to accept defeat, and how you bounce back from it. But that and this are not exactly the same thing, and it's important to make the distinction. Quitting is the active choice of saying, no mas. This thing is no longer worth it. Whatever it is that I was doing, I need to pull back from it because it's not giving me what I needed to do. And you know what that thing is? It could be a relationship. It could be the way you spend money. It could be a mindset. It could be a set of actions or a bad habit. Whatever the thing is that you need to be quitting, you need to quit it. That perspective is going to allow you to quit. This is a very tricky concept for some people to grasp, just because in today's world of talking heads where people constantly give opinions and regurgitate the same recycled information, you often hear things like, don't quit, never give up, keep pushing. But that's not really nuanced, and that's not going to get you to the top. Sometimes you need to quit. You got a habit of smoking cigarettes. It's not serving you. Let it go. The number one person that humans lie to is themselves. We often have a hard time, we struggle with and grapple with just telling ourselves the truth. Well, if we can't tell ourselves the truth, isn't that something we should quit? If you know for a fact that you could be eating cleaner, if you know for a fact that there are certain things that probably never should enter your body, isn't that something you should quit? Certain habits, whether it be on the phone, whether it be listening to people, whether it be building relationships, communicating, eye contact, whatever. There's so many different ways. There's so many different areas in which if you're alert, you'll be able to see that this thing ain't serving me. I gotta quit it. Now, it may not be the most important, but we know for a fact that time is one of the most important resources that we have. And if that's the case, by quitting at the right time, by recognizing that we can't win this particular battle, not giving up everything, not saying that we're done with our goals, but in this particular moment, it's not worth it, we may just save ourselves time. We may just give ourselves more time to prepare on the back end so that we can come back. Having perspective, having that mature mindset, and understanding that today isn't the only day, that's going to allow you to go back and prepare. What if you could save time, resources, and damage, all because you understood that this thing just wasn't worth it anymore? What if you could save energy? What if you could save a relationship? What if you could build and strengthen your spirit just by recognizing and realizing sometimes you don't have it and sometimes you won't? As a human, there are days where you show up and you simply don't have it in you. It doesn't mean you give up on the entire thing. It might just mean that for this day, I don't have it. We all experience relationships that are both good and bad. But how do you recognize and distinguish when a relationship is no longer serving? Because eventually, if you live life long enough, one thing you'll learn is not every relationship is worth continuing. And sometimes, even though it's worth continuing, it's not worth doing so in the same way that you've been doing. Sometimes you got to change things up. Sometimes you got to switch up the way you interact with people. You're quitting the way you used to do things and you're swapping it out for something better. You're quitting bad habits and you're adding it for something good. Quitting is neutral. It's what you choose to do with it. It's why you chose to do it. It's when you chose to do it. I'm not telling you to quit before the battle is over. I'm not telling you to give up on your goals. What I'm telling you is that when it comes to so many aspects of our lives, there are things that we're supposed to remove ourselves from. Situations that no longer serve us. This word toxic is thrown around so often, but oftentimes situations can be toxic. Communication styles can be toxic. What happens when the way that you speak to yourself begins to impact your ability to achieve? You can choose to quit. You can choose to let it go. You can choose to say no more. I'm done with this. It's your choice. Maybe you should quit thinking about something or someone. Maybe it's time to let it go. But how can you if you don't have the willingness and the spirit of quitting intentionally? I'm not talking about giving up on things that are worth it. I'm not talking about just throwing your hands up and doing nothing. What I'm saying is sometimes you got to pull back a little bit and recognize this ain't for me. I can't win if I keep doing things this way. Sometimes what you're quitting is patterns and habits. Sometimes you've developed and practiced doing the wrong thing, and now it's time to completely quit and do the right thing. If there's a wrong time to quit, there must also be a right time. If there's a bad way to quit, there also must be a good way. What would happen if you quit doubting yourself? What if you quit making excuses? What if you stopped procrastinating? What if you stopped being undisciplined? What if you started handling business? What if you swapped all of those things out and traded them in for productivity? All of those will be things that you quit, because quitting isn't a bad thing. It's what you choose to quit. It's when you choose to quit. It's how you choose to quit and why you chose to quit. It's the way you chose to do it. The timing in which you chose to quit. It's the people in which you chose to quit on. Sometimes you need to quit on somebody. Some relationships, if you allow them to continue the way they are, will drain you dry, will cause you nothing but harm and destruction. You got to quit them. Sometimes the relationship that's causing you harm and destruction is the very one that's with yourself. The very same person who was lying to you most is also the very same person who you need to quit treating the way that you are. But are you willing to quit? Do you understand the value that lies within quitting? Do you even understand that quitting is not a bad thing? It's a neutral thing. But what do you decide to quit on? Who do you decide to quit on? When is it a good time to say no more? To throw up the white flag? And is it a permanent one? There's a difference between quitting when victory is out of reach and giving up even though you had a chance to get it. Which one do you think I'm talking about? How much better could life be if you quit making excuses? How much farther could you go if you quit procrastinating? How much more could you get done if you quit being lazy? Quitting is not a bad thing. It's what you choose to quit. When you choose to quit, how you choose to quit. Because if you quit the laziness over a course of 5 years, it's way too long. You need some urgency. When a person wins, when a person is victorious, we often want them to do it with style and grace and class. Well, quitting works the same way. Losing works the same way. When we place that expectation, when we set it in our minds that a person who chooses to win should also choose to behave a certain way, a person who chooses to quit should also do the same thing. Why wouldn't we keep that same energy when it comes to quitting? What if you quit thinking about the wrong thing so much and replaced it with your goals? What if you quit being distracted? What if you quit being negative? What if you quit treating people wrong? What if you quit missing out on commitments that you made? What if you quit failing yourself? What if you quit lying to yourself? What if you quit not living the life that you were supposed to live? What could you replace all of those things with? Well, you could replace the excuses with action. You could replace the lies with truth. You could replace the inactivity with work and discipline and dedication. But only if you choose it. What if today you simply stop convincing yourself that things that are harmful to you actually aren't so much? What if you quit believing that the habits and lifestyles that have held you back are no longer worth committing to? What if you quit committing to everything other than yourself? All of those are ways in which you can quit intentionally, and if you fill them with something better, that could lead to positive outcomes. But that's the next part of quitting. If you quit but do nothing in its place, what did you really do? It's like saying I failed but I didn't learn the lesson, or I lost the money but I didn't learn anything from it. That doesn't make sense. Because if you're going to be intentional about the way that you move and think and act and behave and quit, you also got to be intentional about what you put in that void. Something has to fill it. When you quit a bad habit, there's a space there. If you used to spend 3-4 hours being unproductive, if you don't intentionally choose to fill it with something better, you can still lose it to something different. You still have to be intentional. And that's the important thing about this. All of this, everything I'm saying is being intentional. How often do people get rewarded for hanging on too long? When you stay in a relationship too long, whether it be a friendship, a romantic relationship, whatever relationship, when you stay too long, when you wear out the welcome day, it does damage to you. It creates trauma. What if the time you spend with those people who are haters, who are negative, who are not nice, who don't uplift you? What if you swap that time for people who are positive, who are nice to you, who treat you well, who value you, who respect you, right? We only get so much time and opportunities. What you choose to fill it with is up to you. Sometimes quitting can mean removing yourself from a good situation and placing yourself in an even better one. Because if you're destined for greatness, don't you have to quit the average lifestyle? If you're destined for more, don't you have to quit living like you're less? If you're destined for the top, don't you got to quit living like you're at the bottom? Quitting is not a bad thing. It's how you quit and the things you quit and give up on, and when you choose to do it. Style matters. But quitting ain't a bad thing. In essence, what we're talking about is letting go of what prevents you from being your best. I'm not talking about quiet quitting, where you sort of kind of let something go. I'm talking about you 100% go into, I'm done. I'm talking about 1,000%. You're either in or you're out. Whatever you do, whatever you're committed to, you're committed to. But once you're not, that's when it's time to let go. Sometimes it might not feel like that big of a deal to kick the can down the road. But if you're doing irreparable harm to your relationship, I think it's better if you just let it go. And I'm not even putting a label or limit or restriction on what the relationship is. It could be a relationship with food. It could be a relationship with time. It could be a relationship with money or the internet or your phone or social media or whatever. You got to learn that if it's not serving you, if it's taking more from you, sticking around too long causes resentment. When you stick around in something that you know you should have left, how do you feel afterwards? For me in my life, there's only 2 things I ever really regret. Things I didn't do and things I didn't do quick enough. But they both fit under the same umbrella. What if I quit procrastinating? What if I quit making excuses? What if I quit being distracted? In those very moments, I could have done so much more for myself. But now that I know, I'm okay with quitting when it's the right time. I'm okay with quitting on people who have quit on me. None of us have an endless supply of resources, of time, of money, of energy, of social capital. And when you place those very limited, very few and precious resources into things and places and people and habits that take from you, who can you blame but you? You choose to do things that tear you down, that you expect to be uplifted. You choose to do things that are clearly cursed, yet you expect a blessing. How can a person live in a way that's so cursed but expect constant blessings? How can a person live in a way that's low down and dirty but expect to be uplifted and risen? It won't happen. You can't make it to the top unless you're willing to quit the habits that kept you at the bottom. And something must be keeping you from the bottom. It's easy to blame other people. What happens if you quit? It's easy to say, it's not my fault, it's my environment. And it may be. But what happens if you quit looking at the world that way? Quitting is such a powerful tool. The ability to say, no, I won't think that way. I'm going to do another video on my favorite word. Maybe second favorite word, but it's no. I love saying no to things because it means discipline. Saying no to procrastination is powerful. That's a form of quitting. Saying no to not getting your goals done, that's quitting. Doesn't matter what it is. If for the last 5 months you haven't done it, quit that lifestyle. Become something better. Because quitting is a powerful tool. And it's right there at your disposal should you choose to be intentional and recognize and have the perspective. But it is a choice. And you got to be intentional. What if you quit wasting energy trying to get even with low lives? Arguing with people online, bickering over nothingness, disputing things that don't actually matter, being upset about things that affect you not in the slightest. What if you quit getting tripped up on tiny things, on things that don't matter? What if you quit allowing yourself to get so angry? What if you quit allowing yourself to be so distracted and unfocused? Quitting can be beautiful if it's done in the right way. And of course, timing is everything. Quit too soon and you'll never know if you could have won. Quit too late and you can cause yourself irreparable damage. There's an art to quitting, right? The beautiful mosaic that is your life is going to come with pitfalls and stumbling blocks and failures and losses. It's also going to come with you quitting. Often. Not every time, not most times, but intentionally. And when you can do so in a way that's productive, when you can do so in a way that's going to prevent you from going down that bad path, it's actually a good thing. Doing more of the same thing that is not working might be the worst thing you could do. If you're going to the gym and you're working out in a way that every single day you come home and you're injured and you're sore, it's probably not working. You probably need to rethink some things. When we do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, we often call that insanity. But it isn't. The true definition of insanity is being impervious to new information. Once you find out that the thing you've been doing over and over and over works, you keep doing that thing. And eventually, though the progress may be slow, eventually you'll get somewhere. But sometimes doing the same thing over and over and over only leads to negativity, only leads to destruction, only leads to you being worse off than you were before, and you need to let it go. Sometimes digging in ain't the answer. You need to dig out. Sometimes trying to do more and putting yourself more into a situation is only going to make it worse, because some situations are like quicksand. The more you try to move, the more you try to struggle, the worse it's going to be. Sometimes you just got to let go. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Can you see any progress? Can you see that things are getting better? Can you see improvements? Do you know for a fact that you're going down the wrong path? If you start off on a false premise, you're going to end up at the wrong destination. If you start off building your theories and beliefs and mindsets, your goals on something that isn't true, you're going to have to readjust. You're going to have to reset. You're going to have to refocus, and you're going to have to quit doing things the way you were. And it's not a bad thing. Quitting might mean freedom, but will you choose it for yourself? Quitting might mean growth, but are you willing to allow yourself that leeway? Quitting might be the only thing separating you from the life that you know you're capable of. But what are you willing to let go of? Maybe the word quitting is what you don't like. How about letting go? Letting go of things that don't serve you. When you say it that way, it sounds so much better. But when you let go of things, you quit them. You remove them. The reason why I don't even want to call it simply letting go, because when you let go of something, it almost sounds passive. You release your hands and it floats off into Neverland. What I'm saying is, in choosing to be intentional, I'm walking away from it. You can let go of something but still be in it. Quitting might just require you to take extra steps. Quitting might mean you actually need to pack up and walk away. You actually need to throw some things away. Discard the things that are doing you harm. Get rid of the triggers that pull you back into it. Quitting is a process. Quitting is intentional, and quitting requires action. Letting go may simply require inaction. Quitting requires you being intentional and proactive. That's the difference. If you want to look at it from a macro perspective, letting go may be a part of quitting. But quitting is the intentional part. Letting go may just be, I'm not fighting anymore. Letting go may be acquiescence. Quitting is intentional. So when you take inventory, you think about it, should you quit that relationship? Is it serving you? Or should you quit behaving the way that you are in that relationship and build it and make it even stronger? Quitting doesn't necessarily mean leaving a person or leaving a thing. You may need to be the person that quits thinking with the mindset that you've been having. You may be the problem. And if the problem is within you, it doesn't mean removing yourself from the situation. It doesn't mean letting go. It means being intentional about quitting the things that aren't making you better. Being intentional about the things that are causing you and your loved ones harm. Being intentional about letting go, quitting the things that won't get you closer to where you need to be, or that pull you further from it, push you away from the things that you care about. That's the quitting we want to do. Intentional, focused, deliberate, not accidental, not kind of sort of letting go. We've chosen to do this, and we're going to take action with it. Should you be quitting and giving up on that degree? Maybe you're close to the finish line and you don't feel like putting in that extra work. That's the time to dig in. You shouldn't be quitting. But maybe it's a degree that's worth nothing. Maybe it's something you don't care about. Maybe you're not passionate. Maybe you're wasting time and money and resources. Maybe you should change majors. Maybe you need to quit some aspect of what you're doing and replace it with something better. And that's a choice that you have. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that so many of us struggle with it. If you even think about our phones, deleting apps, deleting pictures, deleting memes, deleting things that aren't necessarily useful, that are taking away storage and memory for your phone or whatever device you have. Oftentimes people struggle with that, even though the thing isn't important. How many times do you see people struggling with throwing away things in their house that they don't need anymore? Random flyers, business cards. Most of the things I've talked about quitting haven't even been tangible. What if the space you're in is messy? Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing to quit living like a slob? To quit living in a way that's beneath what you're worth? What if you just started a business and all of the feedback you've been receiving is good, but the money isn't there? Do you quit? Do you give up? Or do you find new ways to innovate? Do you find a better way to perform and serve your customer? Do you find a better way to innovate and perform and serve your clientele? Or do you pack it in and give up? Maybe the economy is such that the timing isn't right for the business. Or maybe you simply haven't strategized and executed in such a way that's going to lead you to the top. Having a perspective is everything though. Well, if it's been 5, 6, 7 years pouring into a business that's shown no fruits, maybe it's time to pivot. Maybe it's time to quit what you've been doing and replace it for something different. Or maybe it's just time to quit with the bad habits. What if you've been neglecting your mind, body, or spirit? Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing to quit doing that? What if for the last week, month, year, decade, whatever period of time, you've been neglecting your mind? You haven't been treating your body right. Your spirit hasn't been fed. What if you quit? What type of benefit could it bring you if you quit neglecting your mind, body, and spirit? Technically it's quitting. Technically you're giving up, but you're replacing it for something so much better, so much more positive. If you choose to be intentional with what you replace it with. But if you replace bad habits with worse habits, what did you really do? If a person quit being lazy, wouldn't that be a good thing? What if a person quit being unfaithful? Would that be a good thing? And when I say unfaithful, I'm not even just talking about in a human-to-human relationship sense. What if you're unfaithful to your goal? What if you're unfaithful to your beliefs? What if you're unfaithful to your character? You could quit today. You could choose to quit right now and replace it with living in the right way. And all of that, make no mistake about it, all of it is quitting. Lying to yourself and others, procrastinating. All of these are things that would be beautiful, positive, if you could find a way to quit them. In fact, it's probably time to start quitting. You need to quit. Patience is essential to success, but so is perspective. And when you're able to combine the wisdom of both, your outcomes are simply going to be better. The balance between urgency and patience and perspective is everything. By the way, there's a difference between knowing when to quit versus becoming a quitter. Between holding on to something because of your ego versus being wise and patient and understanding that because I have the right perspective, I can recognize that this moment may not be for me, but I can also go back to the drawing board and figure things out. I can replace what's not serving me with something that does. Quitting is neutral. I can sacrifice a smaller battle to win a much bigger war. I can sacrifice one day to win the week or month or year because I got the perspective. What happens when a person decides, I'm not going to have this argument right now? You may just save that relationship. Sometimes quitting and deciding to not have the argument, to not be distracted, to not be lazy, to not make excuses is the best thing you can do for yourself. Often when we hear, think, and talk about quitting, it sounds like a bad thing. It feels negative, like something we shouldn't be doing. But sometimes it's the right thing. That trying harder is the best solution. That digging in is what you need to be doing. And sometimes it is. But many times, you just need to stop. Many times, you need to say no. Many times, you need to quit doing the things that aren't getting you where you need to be and replace them with things that will. Quitting is neither good or bad. It's neutral. It's the timing of when you quit that matters. It's the people you quit on that matters. Based on the timing and who you quit on and why you quit, the perspective you have, the experience that you've been able to live, that's going to determine whether or not you should be doing it. We're often told to try harder and don't give up. But what if that's the very thing you should be doing? What if by trying harder and giving up, you only dig yourself even deeper into the myriad of problems that you've already been suffering? It might be time to let go. It might be time to say no more. It might be time to quit the things that are doing you harm. Because quitting isn't a bad thing. It's just a thing. If what you've been doing hasn't been working and you know for a fact that it hasn't been working, to continue to do so wouldn't be insanity, but it certainly wouldn't be productive. If what you're doing is having zero impact, in fact it's a negative impact, why is it wrong to quit? Maybe the thing you're doing is having zero impact, but it's a worthy cause and you feel passionate about it. It's a part of your why. Maybe in that situation, quitting simply looks like quitting the current strategy that you have and replacing it with something better. Maybe the purpose is right, maybe your heart is in the right place, but the execution isn't. You're not giving up on everything, you're quitting the strategy that didn't work. You're not giving up on your dreams or your goals or your hopes or whatever. You're simply saying that change is necessary, and oftentimes in our lives, it is. Oftentimes when we fail to make the necessary changes or adjustments, that's when we get left in the dust. Quit. Of course there are times you're supposed to dig in, you're supposed to try hard, you're supposed to give it everything you got, and the difference between winning and losing may just be inches and you need to give every single thing that you got. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when you know for a fact there's no way to win, it's unsalvageable, or it's causing you real damage, that's when you gotta let go. They're two very different things. We're not talking about quiet quitting, we're talking about intentional quitting. We're not talking about accidental quitting, we're talking about purposefully leaving the things that do you harm or don't serve you, that keep you from where you need to be. We aren't afraid of quitting. I can't say enough how important it is just to start something, but knowing how and when to finish is just important. And the final point I want to leave you with today is not all quitting, not all finishing, not all ending is a bad thing. Sometimes you quit because the thing is over. And certainly sometimes the thing that you were doing is working and you just need patience and diligence and dedication and to just keep going. But when the timing is right, when the stars are aligned, when you know in your heart of hearts this thing can't be won and to continue to do so would do me more damage, that's when you quit. Being able to distinguish and understand the difference between these two situations is critical if you want to be successful. There are some situations where you need to keep going, where you gotta fight and you gotta push harder. But then there are other situations where doing that is the literal worst thing you could do. Understanding how to distinguish between the two is a skill, and if you can master it, you'll be different. Mastering the difference between these two could mean everything, could lead to the life you wanted, or it could cost you everything. It could cost you the life that you know you're capable of. But what do you choose? Do you quit now and allow yourself more chances to plan? Or do you quit and allow yourself more opportunities to procrastinate? Because you can quit and still get nothing done. You can quit and still not be productive. When you quit, do you strategize or do you suffer? Do you build and you grow? Or do you rest on your laurels and do nothing? Quitting is only part of it. It's the being intentional part, the perspective part that's going to bring this thing home. Because often the difference between everything and nothing is your ability to quit. So will you fall, fold, and fumble? Will you plan or procrastinate? Strategize or suffer? Build or lose everything? All because of your ability to quit. This is the Infinite Evolution.